What the city is talking about. This is Montreal Now on News Talk Radio, CJAD 800.
That is James Mennie. He is over at the Montreal Gazette. And Jim, I know we talked about Pablo Rodriguez yesterday, but I just wanted to bring in Denny Coderre. Have you seen the article in La Presse where Denny Coderre tells his buddy
absolutely.
Pablo, you're making a bad decision here?
Absolutely. And it's kind of funny because when as I believe I've shared with the listeners, I send you my little list of things we're going to talk about, and this was on the list, but it was about Pablo Rodriguez, but the reaction from Fred Beauchemin over the Liberal Party, essentially, and this is in the morning, essentially saying, listen, you know what, Ottawa is sticking its nose and into Quebec's jurisdiction over and over again. We can't have this. This is unacceptable. We've got to have a special commission, blah, 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 blah.
Well, hold on. Isn't that usually the CAC's business?
Let me get there, because I was having this conversation last week, but I just want to set it up properly, because this seems, Aaron, to be a dangerously growing consensus within whatever is purporting to be the Quebec Liberal Party these days, is that what Quebecers need is a version of the CAC light, if you will, or as I suggested very helpfully last week, I can't believe it's not CAC. Now, the thing is, but all that said, so Fred Beauchemin is talking, but he says, you know what, Pablo Rodriguez coming in, the more the merrier. It's going to be good. We're going to have people to debate the issues, blah, blah, which is what you're supposed to say. That's a boilerplate answer. The fact of the matter is, you don't exactly know what you're going to say in the weeks to come. You have no idea what he's going to say in the weeks to come. You don't even know for sure he's going to run. So you just keep the powder dry. Denny Coderre, and to be fair, I'm presuming that La Presse actually approached Denny Coderre for his opinion on this, for his reaction to the possibility that Pablo Rodriguez would be looking to seek the leadership of the Quebec Liberal Party, and basically says, no, there's a mistake. The timing is bad. The Quebec Liberal Party doesn't want to be a branch office of the federal Liberals, which I think is to say the least, a very disingenuous interpretation of what's going on right now in Quebec. But what I love is he helpfully suggests that perhaps Mr. Rodriguez, his time would be better spent running for the mayoralty of Montreal, which is, to be sure, something that Denny Coderre knows about. He's done it 3 times, one time successfully. But here's the thing. Normally, if you're not concerned about an opponent, or indeed you're completely blind as to what your opponent is going to say or do, you kind of take the route that Fred Beauchemin took. But Denny Coderre being Denny Coderre, he didn't do that. The only takeaway I have, I don't know who else is, I can't speak for anybody else who heard it. The only takeaway I have is that all of a sudden, Denny Coderre is realizing he's not alone in that little boat cruising down the tunnel of love, which will eventually lead to the leadership of the Quebec Liberal Party. That, guess what? People are showing up, not people that you can ignore, and frankly, suggesting that a potential adversary go and do something else does not bode well, I think, for for the progress of the campaign, which quite frankly is really going to have to be about ideas, really about, in fact, as Beauchemin said, debating the ideas, because right now there are a lot of potential Liberals in this province who'd like to come back, but there's nothing there to believe in, to adhere to follow. We'll see how it goes. Listen, it's a free country. Denny Coderre can say what he wants, but I don't really think he did himself any favors this afternoon.
Yeah, I got to wonder, though, Jim, as you say this, other candidates, I'm sure now, will start to come forward. You're probably right. I just wonder, is this what it's going to be now? It's about just doing the old CAC routine, as you said. I can't believe it's not CAC, where you're attacking the federal government. Where's ideas beyond that? Have you heard anyone bring up anything?
No, but you know what, Aaron? I was listening to the show in the last half hour. You were talking about Bill 96, and justifiably so. But here's the thing that's emerging, and I touched upon this yesterday. I don't think it's easy to say, much in the same way as I think we mistake that Donald Trump has a tremendous power over the American electorate, that half of the country, he just has to stamp his foot and half the country will rise and revolt. I think that's the biggest load of BS that ever came down the pike. It's being perpetuated by American mainstream media who are in the tank for Trump. But let me tell you, I think the same mythology is being created here, that somehow When François Legault says he speaks for all Quebecers, he's speaking for all Quebecers. He is not. And I would respectfully submit that your average Quebecer is not a xenophobic Anglophobe like the Premier of Quebec. Your average Quebecer just wants to get on with his or her life, be helpful to those around them. And as I said earlier this week, as a spokesman for Dubé's office said, we're concerned about providing good health care no matter what language you speak. We're going to stick with that. Maybe I'm being naive here, but I like to think this is the direction that Quebec is actually headed in, not the direction of fear or division or concern or dare I say hatred that seems to be bubbling up in the wake of a lot of things that the CAQ has done, a lot of things that CAQ supporters and the press are saying. I think a very dishonest portrait is being painted of Quebec as being a frightened, paranoid, Anglophobic enclave when in fact it is anything but. And maybe the way this is going to fall over, the way this will be proved to be nothing more than a completely rotten, empty shell of an egg, is that what we're hearing on the show today about individuals and individuals who are perhaps infinitely more numerous than we've been led to believe, especially by Pierre Colledeau's media outlets.
Well, I will say I was at some point noticing the fact that people were saying I've received service in English. It was not an issue for me. I was particularly moved by the gentleman who said he went to a license bureau today, and one of the employees there, and he was having difficulty, the employee speaking English, but still offered to speak English to this person, realizing that that's the language you wanted to be served in. So it's gratifying to hear stories like that. Maybe you're right, Jim. Maybe this is about the CAQ and not about Quebec.
Well, maybe, the difference is when you're working behind the counter at the SAAQ office, your perspective on life and on the people around you is different when you're sitting in front of a computer screen in the newsroom of the Journal de Montréal, and the only people who you talk to think and say exactly what you say, and you have a mandate to make sure that things appear as awful as possible in Quebec.
Fair enough. Good for you. All right, let me move on and talk about, I don't know if you want to talk about this. We now know, of course, what it's going to look like in the U.S. Vice presidential pick today for Kamala Harris, Tim Walz, governor of Minnesota. And of course, now I had a gentleman on from a radio from a talk station in Milwaukee, because of course, the Republicans have been looking at the short list like everybody else and planning their attack, if you will, against this person. Anything you heard today that kind of surprised you?
The fact that they're really, I mean, you look at Tim Walz. If our listeners haven't seen him yet, go take a look at this guy. Okay, get a visual of this guy, and I mean this in the best possible way. I've got a pic of him right in front of me right now. He's wearing a gray baseball cap. He could be easily wearing a red baseball cap, if you know what I mean. This is the archetypical American guy who looks like he'd be a supporter of Trump, but he's not. He's adamantly opposed to Trump. In fact, when you listen to him talk, you realize there are white guys who look like that, who are not absolutely terrified that they're going to be replaced and frightened, and only Donald Trump can help them. This guy sounds like he's too good to be true. But I got to tell you, I'm getting a weird feeling here, Aaron, just looking at Donald Trump's history, whether in business or in politics. And, I like to say every now and then, I am known to be a betting man. But I think the odds are starting to shorten on the fact that Donald Trump is suddenly going to discover, whether he has bone spurs or something else, he's not going to be able to run for the presidency of the United States, and he's going to have to drop out.
Whoa. Hang on a second.
Whoa.
What are you saying?
You heard it. Because this guy is a malignant narcissist, and I think the idea of being whooped by Kamala Harris, of seeing the media turn its back on him, seeing the Russians turn their back on him, and please don't think that prisoner exchange took place because they thought they could get a better deal with Biden. They realized that they would never be dealing with Trump because Trump would have handed them over those prisoners with not asking nothing in return. I think Trump is in huge trouble, and his ego is realizing now that unless he finds a weaselly way to get out of doing his duty as a presidential candidate, the same way he did as theoretically someone who's called upon to serve their country, he's going to have a lot of problems. This guy, every single indicator right now says this is not going to end well for Donald Trump. Does Donald Trump, seeing what he sees, want to remain in that situation? He's already being dismissed as a coward for not debating Kamala Harris. How much more damage can he do to himself? He's suddenly disguised because of his health. Oh, I discovered I had a health problem after that assassination attempt. I can no longer continue, blah, 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 blah. I'm very sorry, but I'm going to withdraw from public life, whatever. I think he realizes the writing is on the wall. I don't see him finishing this trip, honest to God.
Well, you heard it here first. I would just ask Jim, and I want to wrap up, with respect to this debate against Kamala Harris, which he would have had to do against Biden. He agreed to one. Are you thinking that he will not take part in a second debate?
Absolutely not. He wants to be on Fox a week earlier with his own moderators and his supporters in the audience. Are you kidding me? He knows that everyone's going to say no to that. He just wants to be able to say, see, she backed out of that debate too. Don't come after me. But in fact, he is backing out of a debate that he agreed to because he knows he's going to be cut to ribbons. It's as simple as that. And I don't really care. Please, before anyone goes, you're campaigning for Kamala Harris, I could care less. You know, I got really divided opinions over the United States in general. But the fact of the matter is, this guy finally, after like 8 years, is being called out for what he is, and I'm not sure he can take that heat for much longer.
Well. Okay. James Mennie at the Montreal Gazette. Thank you, Jim.
Matt.